Hey, what's up guys? I'm Josh and welcome to my studio. Today we're going to be talking about some of the equipment that I use, some of the things that I just have in here, and I guess we're going to go ahead and jump right in. We're going to go ahead and start with the desk because that's probably the most common, prominent area with the most amount of stuff here. We're going to start a little bit by talking about what powers it, which is going to be this powerhouse right here. This has a 3900 XT in it. I wish it was a 5950X, but I can't seem to find one. It's still having stock issues like a lot of people right now. I do have a 3090 in there though, which is an absolute unit. A ton of storage, about 64 gigabytes of RAM, NZXT case. Okay, so all that is feeding into the monitor, which is actually a television. It's an LG CX 48-inch television. It is a OLED 4K, 120 hertz, G-Sync, 1 millisecond response time, super color accurate monitor. I love it so much. It's 120 hertz on a 4K monitor like this up close at the desk is just another level of gaming that I don't think most people get to experience. I wish they could, because it's honestly, and I don't mean this as a pun, it's a game changer. I love it so much. All of this is on my desk, which is actually a dining tabletop. This is the Denton, I believe, marble and acacia wood tabletop. This thing is about 250 pounds. And then up here you have all the audio stuff, which we'll go over real quick. So my DAC and amp is a Topping D70S DAC and a Topping A90. So I'm not really brand loyal to Topping in any way. I just happen to be using those because they're some of the best measuring equipment that's out there right now. I think the total between these two is about $1,100 or $1,200. It's definitely on kind of the middleweight division price tag for audio DAC and amps. And all that is feeding into one of my favorite personal possessions and one of my references for my actual job, which is reviewing audio equipment, which is the Diana V2 from Abyss. I run through a lot of headphones, and the headphones that I listen to are of all different types and all different varieties, and they all have different benefits and drawbacks. This is no different. It's got benefits, it's got drawbacks, it's got things it's great at and things it's bad at, but the things that it's good at just tailor so well to me personally, and I love it. It's got excellent vocal response. It's got like this mid-range timbre that I just find so engaging. I love listening to this thing. It's by far my favorite headphone. Yes, it's taken over the spot of the Aria. As I go back and forth, I just find this to be a much better, more consistent headphone. Now I do a lot of my critical production stuff with that headphone because my monitors, which are Airmotive 6s from Emotiva, they're okay. They're not great. I'll replace them eventually with either Genelecs or Barefoots, but as of right now, they're just all right. They get the job done for media consumption, you know, just general internet browsing, movies, the occasional game, but I don't use them as any sort of reference. Okay, so I try not to be super brand loyal to things, but for my keyboard and mouse, I've been using Logitech like mice forever. And I don't know if it's just the way that they design their mouse to fit specific hand styles and that just works well for me, or if they just make really good decisions. But I tried other mice and I always go back to a Logitech. So I'm using a Logitech G Pro wireless, and I'm also using a G915 TKL with the clicky keys on it as my keyboard of choice. And I've been really, really happy with these. I do intend eventually to get into the mechanical keyboard scene where you build your own and all that fancy stuff. But what I love about this more than anything, more than the efficient, sleek design, more than the keys, is the Lightspeed wireless tech that's in here. Okay, so one of the things that I've been trying to do with the studio is to add efficiency where possible for things. So if you can see right here, there's this little circle right here, and this is actually a magnetic charging port. So if this cable is hooked up, I could just plug this in and it would charge. And I also have this on my keyboard and a few other peripherals out here. But the cool part is it just yanks off real easy. So it charges super quick, and this doesn't add that much weight to the mouse. And so it's super convenient, super efficient, super easy. I like this a lot. So some of the cooler things that I use around the studio include some weird lights and some weird lenses and some weird methods of shooting, and I want to show you that a little bit. One of the cool things that I use is this Laowa probe lens. So this is a super long, super heavy duty lens. It's also kind of a little pricey and it hurt when I bought it, but I'm glad I did because it provides some of the coolest shots that you'll see on this channel. So this thing kind of shoots down into areas like this. And one of the more difficult things about a lens like this is the amount of light that you need to use this thing because it shoots from an aperture of f14 to f40. It's incredibly dark, but if you can get enough light, the shots that come out of this thing are ludicrous and they're very cool. But one of the big challenges with a device like this is handling movement because it provides so much weight and torque in it's got such weird dimensions for the camera. It's actually difficult to find sliders and gimbals that will smoothly work with this thing so that the footage doesn't look all jerky. It's actually really sensitive to movement because your point of input for your light is so far away from your actual sensors. Okay, this is one of my favorite tools. This is a Quasar Science model name that I can't recall, and I will put it in the description down below. This thing is a RGB light that gets incredibly bright. This is the lowest setting right here. This is the lowest setting that it goes on. It's really quite bright. It goes in every single color. It has all different modes, like it can flash and give you like the police look, some lightning looks. Anyways, this thing looks super cool, like a lightsaber. It's pretty neat, but I've been using this in conjunction with that lens because it's so bright and in every single color that it just provides a very unique look. And I'll put some shots up here that I used it with. But this light is one of those things where, you know, it can really enhance the look of a particular scene, but it's not going to really light an environment like a big, you know, aperture light will with a softbox on. It's not going to provide that sort of thing, but it's more of like a background or light shaping enhancement tool. But yeah, you'll see this thing sitting in the background all the time. I think it adds, I don't know, it's just a layer of sci-fi to it, a layer of like uniqueness to it that I think is pretty cool. I just really enjoy using it. I like the look of it. Okay, so I want to show you guys some stuff that I use on the actual video production, and it's not everything, but it's, you know, a good example of a lot of the equipment that I have. So one of the things to think about when you're seeing this side of a studio is the use case of everything and how efficiently things are to use. And there's a lot of stuff that I use, but it's very rare for me to use it, and I'm not pulling it out every single day, like that probe lens. I don't use it every day. And one of the things that I want to do, and I've been kind of obsessed with doing lately, is putting things that are not immediate access, everyday use things into neat storage containers like this Pelican case here. So like, for example, I have an iFi DAC that is a wonderful sounding DAC, but it's too expensive to judge most headphones on just because it's oftentimes significantly more than the price of it. I also have IEM storage that is in a watch case that I kind of stole from Zeos. And I think this is kind of cool. Anyway, so I want to put more things that I use on a semi-daily basis into containers like this because I think they're cool. This is just a cool factor thing. But there are a few things that I use all the time. Sliders like this one, I use constantly. This is a motorized slider from GVM. I'll be honest, I don't like this thing that much. I'd much rather have a different slider, but I don't know a good one that has such a long track. And the main thing that's the problem with this is that at low speeds or on really close, tight shots, it jitters a little bit, it kind of jumps and it's kind of jerky. I don't really like that much. One of the things that I was doing, and one of the tools that I use here currently is a gimbal. And this is a Ronin SC. And this thing I used to put up on here and it would kind of stabilize the footage a little bit, but you had to run two controls. One was the movement of the slider and the other one was the movement of the gimbal to have it pan with the sliding movement. It was complicated. It worked kind of well, but too complicated for continuous all the time use. And then we have the cameras, and for a lot of these shots, I use these cameras for different reasons. I use the A6300 a lot for overhead videos. They're just efficient little cameras. They shoot in 4K, and I use this camera since almost the beginning of my channel. I love it. It's great. Now for everything that's not the probe lens, because I need really high ISO performance, which that main camera has, a lot of the macro shots you see on this channel are this setup specifically. So I have a GH5 running a Olympus 60mm macro, which on the GH5 with the crop factor, because it's a micro four thirds sensor, it has an equivalent lens length of about 120mm. Now, because of how zoomed in this is, being 120mm macro, it's really sensitive to movement as well, just like that probe lens I was talking about. And so I actually found this Edelkrone slider that has very, very smooth movement, but it's not a very far track. It does not move very quick. And this thing is quite pricey for what it is, but it gets the job done. So while these are B cameras, my A camera is one of my, another favorite piece of tech that I use, and it is a Sony a7S III. And this is one of the latest and greatest cameras to come out of Sony. This thing is a phenomenal camera. The specs on it are absolutely insane. It's a full frame sensor that shoots in full 4K, up to 120 frames per second, with insane ISO performance, great battery life, with stabilization that's actually good, as you can see. Now, the way that I have mine set up is just with a small rig cage on it with a couple of mounting points along the cage. And then I run it with a Sigma 24 to 70 f2.8 usually, though I do have an 85mm 1.2, and of course that Laowa probe lens that I use from time to time. Everything else though is pretty much B cameras. Now it also records all those modes, 4K, 120, all the way up to 422 10-bit recording. So you need really fast storage, but if you have the storage for it, it makes some beautiful looking footage. And they also base some cinema cameras, including the FX3 and the FX6, off of the a7S III. It's a very great camera. One of the reasons why I picked this camera over some other options, like Canon just came out with their C70, and Blackmagic just came out with the Ursa 12K, which is insane. I did consider that one, was just because the size, the form factor. One of the things I need to upgrade to be able to use that camera fully to what I use it for is the gimbal. So I use the Ronin SC, but I almost exclusively have to use the A6300 on it, just because the weight and size of that camera is so much heavier than this is really rated for. So I want to get a Ronin RS2 eventually. I'm just being lazy about it. But once I get that, I'll be using that pretty much exclusively. Love that camera. All right, and then you have these things. And what this is a little Rgb light, and it's battery powered, and it's from Aperture, and can do any color that you want. These things are great. They're also magnetic, and these things are in a lot of the shots that I use. They also have a little screw in the top, so you can fit these onto a little stand and put them in places you wouldn't otherwise be able to get to them. These things are great. I need to buy more. I think that's everything that I wanted to talk about, everything that I use on a fairly daily basis, and I can't think of anything else that I've forgotten. Until the next video, my name is Josh. B is behind the camera. Thank you very much for helping me out, by the way. And I'll see you guys next time.